Hello, and welcome to my summer 2021 anime reviews. This video is very late. This season has been over for over a month now, but I have a lot of excuses, like I moved. I am in a new apartment now, which is why the background is different. I'm actually just sitting on my bed. I don't really have a good setup for recording videos yet. I'm still in the process of getting a good desk. But regardless, anime marches on, and I want to get caught up with the next season, which means I really want to get out my takes and opinions on this previous season. As I said, I have a lot of excuses, not just the move, but I've been infiltrated. I live with some friends now. Also, like, everyone I know is double vaxxed. The world is opening up again. I have many activities to do that typically out-prioritize anime. I've spoke often before of an anime watching club that we used to meet every Wednesday over Discord to stream some of the currently running series. That's still going on, but I'm not really a part of it anymore. Just because I've been busy so many times on Wednesday nights, and then I haven't had the chance to catch up on shows. So this period of anime watching is extremely low, especially compared to the seasons immediately previous to this one, where I watched like a ton of shows. And it's tragic because this looked like an absolute banger season again, but I only just barely scraped the surface of it. We have a long list of things I did not watch. Vanitas no Carte, this was a Bones series about vampires and vampire hunters, and I don't know what else because I only watched one episode, and it was pretty fantastic. It had all of the charming Bones action sequences, that really creative kinesthetic touch, some yaoi bait, also pretty typical of the studio, but I don't know, I just didn't have the time to watch it. I think it would have been great. Jahi-sama, I watched one episode of just because I was curious, but I already read the manga for this. There's my cat. He stayed just out of frame. Okay, see ya. And the adaptation seemed fine. I think they could have gone a lot more like creative with it, a lot more bold, and made it something like really expressive and over the top. But it was just fine, so I didn't really feel like I had to watch it, having read the manga. This I wanted to watch primarily because my friend who animates, this was the first show he worked on. This is the first contract he was given. And I watched the first two episodes, and it was like quite entertaining. I thought it was a very funny premise. I really liked the characters. It had this like very cruel, miserable, sarcastic humor. That's kind of rare in anime. That was a nice change of pace. But I mean, as much as I would have liked it, I just didn't watch it. All these shows passing by my eyes like ships in the night. This I was curious about because it's based on a manga that's written by Cool Kyoshinsha, whose name will pop up a few times in this video in various ways. And I was curious about it because I hadn't read the manga, and I thought they could probably make a very fun adaptation out of it. You know, the story of the Peach Boy is very well known, so it's a very fertile ground for a very wacky interpretation, which I thought was what we were getting. But I don't know, because I didn't even try watching it. I didn't even watch an episode. Same with this. This seemed like it had an interesting premise, and the character designs were cool. But I just didn't even get a chance to try it. Was it good? I don't know. This I watched the first episode of. It's a water polo show by MAPPA. I was pretty happy with it. I thought it was very well done. And the premise was very interesting, where it's this kid who is a fantastic water polo player, went to like the nationals, then was in this terrible car accident, was in a coma for like a year, and emerges nearly amnesiac, totally unable to play water polo, and now has to relearn with a new team. I just kind of think that's an interesting premise, that he already has like the athletic talent and this like aptitude and this potential that's been set up, but he has to like relearn the basics as like an audience immersion point. I don't know, it seemed well done. They introduced a girl character. I don't know what's up with that. This is obviously a yaoi bait premise. A bunch of guys playing water sports together. But I don't know. I don't know if they were actually going to go in that direction. I don't know, because I only watched one episode. I just didn't have time. It's sad. This I actually watched like 3 episodes of. I was super impressed with the animation. Really just creative production. The premise was cool too. This is based on a manga remake the original manga was written by somebody else, but then it was remade by Cool Kyoshinsha. And I really felt like his perverse spirit was there, as well as this other kind of storytelling influence, which was like a really cool combination. It reminded me of Toho, really. The premise is like these gods are summoned up by the prayers of people to manifest into the world. But because the gods are so ridiculously powerful and immortal, they've really like become morally disjoint from the struggles and the strifes of humans, and they just kind of dick around while the humans are at war with each other. That I don't know, that somehow that sort of premise and that sort of power level and stuff really appeals to me. I think via Toho. But what I didn't like about the show, and the reason I didn't keep watching it, is that it's just like very gruesome and unpleasant. There's like a lot of really upsetting scenes right from the start. Every episode had some like assault type scene or some really gory scene, and something about it was just too real, like the crunch of the impact. It was very well done, but in a way that wasn't appealing to me. And more it seemed like it was just going to move into like a very generic battle shonen where more and more powerful demons show up to fight the Ideten, rather than really focusing on this idea of the Ideten being like these like weird disjoint degenerates that don't really understand what they're there for anymore. So, I don't know. Again, I feel like if I had more time, I would have watched it. It would have been very interesting. I would have loved to discuss it. I'm just too busy. Too busy for anime. This one, I don't think I would have watched it under any circumstances. I tried it because the manga had been recommended by some friends of mine, and I think it could work better as a manga, but as an anime, it just was very dull and uninteresting. It's another like isekai where this guy becomes like a pharmacist. I swear there was another show with like this exact same premise. But just like right off the bat, they had some plot lines that seemed like really contrived. Like they weren't even kind of doing like the basics. It didn't seem like a very interesting fantasy world. I can't even remember the premise of the first episode. I think one of the plots was like, should we sell our potions in like neighboring stores? Should we distribute to stores? And the other plot was like, this guy's wife is mad at him. Do you have a medicine that makes my wife not mad at me? And they just seemed like not at all interesting fantasy premises, but instead just kind of like really hackneyed like sitcom premises, awkwardly shoved into a very plain fantasy world. So, Also, I found the voice of the dog character really grating, and saying something like that makes me feel like I'm turning into a normie, but it was too much for me. It was unpleasant. This was about acting school. I watched the first episode. It was quite good. I liked the characters. I liked the idea of them going to this like very prestigious kind of old school acting school that has these years of tradition. I liked both the main characters and their origins. The production was like very quaint in a charming way. It didn't really try to overstep itself. Where are you in a hurry off to? Huh. Anyways, yeah, I think again, I probably would have been happy to watch it, but I just did not prioritize it. This. So I watched the first episode of this, and it was quite sacrilegious, I would say, in how much they tried to blend the world of the original Madoka series with this Mobage spin-off Magia Record. I've already gone into some depth about how much I didn't like the first season of Magia Record. I had no reason to think I would like the second season. I was watching it out of like morbid curiosity and out of this vague sense of like duty that I need to, share why I think it's so flawed. And maybe like use it as a general indictment and symptom of gotcha game capitalism and this like kind of character spam type writing style where they just keep introducing characters and they keep transforming into their SSR forms. And I just realized at some point I don't have any sort of duty like that. Nobody cares. Nobody's gonna watch this. If you're gonna watch this, you're some sort of Madoka fanatic that's gonna watch it no matter if I give it like a 4 or something anyways. So what's the point? I would rather just watch a show I liked. Like this. I am watching this. It's a 2-core, so we're going to be talking about it next season. I am behind on it. I'm behind on like everything that's airing this season, but it's been really good so far. Exactly what I want out of these like PA working people type shows. So Check it out if you like Shirobako or Sakura Quest or Iroha or whatever. It's lovely. Okay, let's get into... So this is actually a show that aired the season before this. So this is like super, super, mega, mega, omega late. But I only watched it last season because as a group we were watching Gridman first. As like either a refresher for people who had already seen it or a few people in the group hadn't seen it at all. And we figured for the sake of any potential thematic crossover or continuity or whatever with Dynazenon, we really ought to watch that first. Which was great. I love Gridman, and I loved Dynazenon too. It's a very subdued slice-of-life drama about coming to terms with your mom's new man, and what role does he have in your life, and investigating the mysterious death of your older sister. Was it suicide? We don't know. And reconnecting with an old classmate with whom years and years ago in primary school you experienced this very surreal, very exciting moment, and now that your life is at this kind of stagnant stage, what will their reemergence into your life, what kind of opportunities will spring forth from that? This or struggling with your anxiety that keeps you from attending school. Sounds like an adaptation of an Inyo Asano manga, right? Is this just the latest plotlines in the Demon? Is this his brand new work? Just kidding. It's a show about dinosaur robots that fight kaiju. But these interpersonal dramatic aspects of it aren't just like afterthoughts. It's not just window dressing for the fights. They're depicted in this really wonderfully rich and detailed, all too real settings. I'm just in love with how they do... Someone's calling me. I think this is a spam number. I don't know. The care that Trigger puts into backgrounds in shows like this is unreal. I would love to see like kind of a behind the scenes of how they build up these settings, because they feel so lived in, and then to see these like really kind of subtle character dramas play out, it just gives you this really tense melancholy, I think, is the only word for it. And this is something that the Trigger staff has been good at all the way back to Evangelion, the progenitor of this kind of half giant kaiju battle, half interpersonal drama type fusion. There's a scene in this one, the unlisted video scene. If you've watched this series, you know what I'm talking about. That was one of the most uncomfortable moments I have ever had watching anime. Ever, ever, ever. I was watching it with a friend of mine. We were both just like shocked, like nervous, silent the whole time. And then afterwards it was like all we could talk about was like, oh my god, like what do you think of that? Like, what do we believe? I don't know. I don't want to get into it. I don't want to spoil it, but that scene stood out to me as just exquisitely well done depiction of this like all too real melancholy tension. As much as I loved all of that, I would get frustrated sometimes by the obligatory kaiju appearance, and every single episode had to have a big kaiju fight at the end. Like, when will Trigger just make straight up a drama series? It's just down to earth, it's all realistic, no supernatural elements, no robot battles. There must be some people at Trigger that want to do this, right? They're so good at it. They have all of the talent necessary to make a series like this. It's just a subset of series they've made before. When will they do it? But I do think, like, it is kind of cool. The message here is that there's, like, a transcendence of the dramatic gridlock through supernatural forces. That at the point in the episode where the characters can't really progress in their arcs on their own, the kaiju shows up, they all fight, they kind of learn something by fighting. Sometimes it's really cool, sometimes it's really inspirational, sometimes it's cheap, like it just seems kind of like lazy writing. This is actually still kind of Asano-esque. Poon Poon and what's that one called? Like Sunshine City and Nigihara Holograph, and then of course the Demons. All kind of have like a similar dynamic. They really should get Asano to write a series with them. That would be so good. Their art styles are similar too. These sort of Trigger shows and Asano's work. But I digress. And I think it is pretty cool that like this on a meta level is like also what the kaiju are there for. They're there to like break people out of emotional bonds and to represent like an overwhelming emotional force that like can overcome stagnation. I think the plot gets a little confusing, but based on what the kaiju users are saying, I think that's like what kaiju exist for in the universe. But only sometimes did I get frustrated by this, because other times it was like pretty badass. They really are good at making these fight scenes. The passion and talent in animating homages to just dudes in rubbered suits smashing into each other, doing that in 2021 with such brilliant animation, that's inspiring. It shows a lot of love and care for this tradition that's just multiple generations old now of Sentai series and Kaiju series and stuff. You can tell that a lot of these people grew up watching these shows, and this is the way they're conveying that childhood passion in a new, sophisticated way. The feeling of escalation across fights, the new forms, the operatic singing when they start singing Dynazenon during the transformation and stuff. When they start playing the opening theme during the transformation, they know what they're doing. You can't imagine it being any better than this. I found it really cool having seen this right after Gridman. Just these weird connections and subversions and escalations. It really doesn't follow any of like the rules Gridman has, and it was never, this is spoilers I guess, but it never like cleanly links itself to Gridman. But instead there's just all of these kind of confusing but also very awesome little connections that you can notice if you've seen them both recently. But unsurprisingly, this is not even a spoiler, because how else could it end? The ending is super Gainax / Trigger Core. And I'd say that's like maybe the biggest flaw of the series, is just it's not like super satisfying when it kind of feels like they write themselves into a corner, and then they're at the end they're just like, well, I don't know. What are kaiju? What are the kaiju? I don't know. And again, I don't feel like this is a spoiler, because when has a Trigger show ever ended any differently? Anyways, I would give this a solid 9.5. I think it's fantastic. I think they did everything they did to the highest level of achievement they could have. They just they have a hard time ending their shows. That's how it's always been. Okay, next we're going to talk about Sonny Boy. This is my official, if you don't like anime, you might still like this show of the season. I don't know why I always point this out, because I feel like if you're watching these videos and you don't like anime... No, I think there's people that do that. Anyways, yeah, check this one out. Even if you're not deep into anime, this one is pretty cool. You do like to you have to like weird and uncomfortable and confusing and like tense things. I wouldn't say this is like a universally enjoyable show. It's a show of many genres and modes simultaneously. Let's break these down. First off, it's a show where a bunch of people are dumped into some dangerous and mysterious game. I usually hate these. This is one of the most overdone genres in all of anime. And now it has exploded into the mainstream via Squid Game, which is just like disorienting, but whatever. With very few exceptions, I find this genre really tedious and not that interesting. So I'm glad there's more to Sonny Boy. A group of people suddenly get superpowers with mysterious rules. Sometimes I like this. Again, it's very overdone, but it can be interesting, and this time it was interesting. In a mysterious setting, people need to establish a new society. I usually like stories like this. I'm usually interested in that kind of thing. Dr. Stone is a completely different series than this, but also one that I really enjoy. For some of the same reasons. Just this sense of newness and freshness to a world that's like yours to build and create. The idea of like building up society from atomic parts is really cool. Trying to prioritize what are the things we miss, what are the things we can do without. I don't know, it's just an interesting kind of discussion to have within the confines of some mysterious setting where we're not really sure what the ultimate purpose of rebuilding will have to be. And then there's this subdued journey through myriad aesthetics like Yume Nikki. I got big Yume Nikki vibes from this series. I don't want to get too much into how this series is actually like structured and stuff, because I think it's very good to go in blind. But if it means anything to you that it has like Yume Nikki vibes, then you'll probably be really excited to hear that it has Yume Nikki vibes. And this is something that I really, really love. Just, I don't know, just like really weird places. And it's not like there's an imminent danger in those places, but instead you're just kind of occupying them and journeying through them with like an unclear purpose. That sort of thing is like very evocative to me, very resonant with me. And then the sense of hacking the tropes of the previous genres to solve challenges, which is the kind of, hopefully this isn't too much spoilers, but this is kind of the ultimate path of the series, is that they have to use the conventions and idiosyncrasies and stuff of these genres and tropes to solve their problems. I didn't even know how much I would love something like this when I really clued in to certain undercurrents and plots and stuff that are based around people like manipulating these rules and taking advantages of aspects that you might not like have a focus on at first. Oh my god, that's so cool. That's such a cool idea for a story. This is so cool. So yeah, I didn't even know. I didn't even like think of that as like a line of plot writing, but oh my god, it's so cool. The production style on this is completely unique and wonderful. The character animation is like super classic. It feels almost Ghibli-esque at points. When we watched the first episode, there's one scene in particular where like multiple people were like, that guy moved like a Ghibli character. But it also reminds me a lot of Ikuhara. It reminds me of Yuasa and the Science Saru stuff. And then there's a lot of stuff that's just like purely brand new, that they just chose to go in directions that I had never seen before. And it was a huge success. It's the power of Madhouse. Like Madhouse did this show. Oh my god, dude, Madhouse must be full of artistic savants. The character animation, very classic in this regard, but the setting animation is super modern, super new, super cutting edge. And this is what I was talking about, this kind of like Yume Nikki dynamic. Just the environments that they set up and the way they're depicted is really like nothing else I've ever seen. And it has this sense of modernity to it. It has a sense of going beyond other shows that already tried to make kind of trippy, far-out environments. The soundtrack is also a blend of like really classical appeal, but then there's these really like hyper minimalistic bangers that I loved. And then on top of that, when they've really earned it after like a really emotional episode, they'll have these montages with just like straight up sing your heart out rock music, blasting the guitar and stuff. It's great. It's really great. But what impresses me the most about this show, putting aside writing and production, is the characterization. I thought it was fantastic. Despite everything else being so intricate, confusing, mysterious, every character feels very real, very compelling, very three-dimensional. Oh, I still left the camera up here. Oops. Even those with a very restricted role, that is, they play only kind of one part in the plot and are sort of one-dimensional in how they interact, they feel resonant in this like archetypal way that you feel like you can project and extrapolate a lot of other qualities of the character into this setting, such that, like, for example, there's this very obnoxious, very over-the-top baseball captain type character. Even though his characterization is quite limited, you can extrapolate how he must be feeling in this bizarre environment in a way that makes him feel very compelling and very three-dimensional. This characterization leads to a very subtle but heavy, melancholic feeling. It's all too real, despite the surreality. And I think this melancholy, it kind of cuts both ways, though. And this is what I would say the big flaw of the show is. That because it's all rooted in this very unrelatable setting, it doesn't really feel like there was like a message. Like, there's some analogous thinking between like the supernatural and the societal that you can say, oh, you know, in this weird setting, they've actually recreated a microcosm of society, or you'll meet some character that you go, oh, that's supposed to represent this like real life societal force. But it doesn't really go all the way with this. And because it's so kind of abstracted from real life, and these problems are so supernatural. It feels like it's neither having the cake nor eating it. Like, instead of trying to have it both ways, it's content to just kind of have it neither way. And it's compelling enough still on this level of like interpersonal drama that you don't really need to care that much about the intricacies of the supernatural problems, and it doesn't really expect you to. But sometimes the emotions of the characters do hinge on some weird revelation. That, you know, somebody will say some very jargony statement about the rules of the world, and the other character is like, oh, yeah, life is like that. And you're like, what? Life is like what? Because, you know, you don't really understand. You're not really there. You don't really know what it's like for them. So it doesn't quite nicely land. There's sometimes a bit of a disconnect between this really rich and real melancholy that the characters have, and then what you have access to as a viewer. It's really hard to strike this balance, I think, of being like weird and over-explained and resonant. Like, you gotta hit a sweet spot between like those things in order to kind of achieve... over-explained is negative. I don't know why I put over-explained. It should just be explained. But you know what I'm trying to say here, right? Like, you can explain things more so it feels more resonant, but then you lose some weirdness. But I'm really happy that this show went hard on weird. It's very rare that they don't go the other route of over-explaining things and bogging the viewer down in like jargon and stuff, just so that they can understand how the characters are feeling. Instead, it's just like, yeah, the situation is like weird as hell. The characters are freaked out. Enjoy. So that's a nice change of pace. So this I would give a 9. Very, very well done, very well made, but in the end, it might end up being a little forgettable, just because it never deeply, deeply resonated with me. It resonated on like an aesthetic level, and it resonated on the level of like, yeah, the characters are like moping around and depressed, and I mope around and I'm depressed, but it never really bridged into my life itself. Okay, next we're going to talk about Love Life Superstar. So, you might be kind of surprised to see that this made the cut. Here, you can see I'm literally just lying on my bed talking about anime. I feel so powerful. Yeah, like, I went through all those shows, and I'm like, yeah, this looked like a banger, but I didn't watch it. Yeah, this was fantastic, but I dropped it. And yet I watched all of Love Live Superstar. I started watching it because the Anime Watching Club was watching it. But even when I had kind of, like, disconnected from the club, and I was super behind, and I wasn't watching stuff live with them, I still finished it. Why? Because I was invested. Because I cared. I wanted to see if they would win the Love Live. I wanted to see if they would get good at singing, if the girl could overcome her stage fright and stuff, you know? Anime just makes you care. But yeah, this is essentially what I expected from Love Live. I did watch the first season of Love Live, like, way, way back in the day. I think 2014. And I liked it. I think it was one of my favorite shows that year. And this has everything that I liked about it. I think even more refined. There's some major improvements. First, they cut from 9 girls to 5 girls. Why didn't they do this sooner? This is so much better. When you have 9 main characters, you almost have like 0 main characters. Like, you can't really do that much with any given relationship, with any given character arc. When you have 9 characters occupying a 12 episode, 22-minute show. So I like that. There's way less performances. They used to kind of shoehorn a performance scene in every single episode, which I found kind of tedious and often really unnecessary and kind of just distracted from the plot. I still think there's kind of too many performances, but they mixed it up a bit more. Now there's some more like kind of diegetic musical type performances where it's not like they're actually up on a stage, but that the characters burst out in performance while doing whatever. I like that because it's a little more ingrained in the plot, and it's just a little more interesting than them just singing and dancing on stage again. And there's more internal conflicts versus external conflicts. That more of the drama of the series came from the characters' own like insecurities and their like character arcs. There's a long focus for each character on having them join the group being like convinced that this is a good idea and that they can really do it, that they should make it a priority. Just like more focus on that instead of like, oh, and another bad thing happened, how are we going to deal with it? And now this other bad thing happened, how are we going to deal with it? Because here we have like a lot more intimacy with the characters, that it's all about the characters as people. The biggest improvement was the cinematic feel. The show has a really nice cinematic feel that really, really impressed me. Everything had this powerful sequence-based direction, good sense of shifting from like the comedic to the dramatic to the tense to the triumphant. Just little things, like they have these diegetic title cards that the title of the episode will appear on like a sign or as like shimmering through the stained glass. I remember it was a good one. And it feels like they're going for a bit more of an impact than most anime. That they have, again, I'm always using this term, a cinematic feel. And essentially what I mean by that is that it has very high expectations for the audience's engagement. That to me, one of the big things that differentiates movies and most TV is that movies expect you to be giving it like your full attention and to have been watching it continuously from the start of the movie, right? Because it's meant to be seen in like theaters or in a theater like experience. Whereas TV shows, most people watch them kind of in the background. They watch episodes when they can. There's no like commitment to it. But TV shows that like expect the level of commitment of a movie, I would say, can take advantage of this like cinematic appeal and really work on a sequence by sequence based thing. Anyways, I've explained this all before. Hopefully it makes sense. But yeah, this probably sounds all basic. As I said, a lot of TV shows kind of operate this way now, like prestige TV. But it's advanced and very good for like an idol show. Like seeing this very standardized format of an idol anime expressed with this level of prestige and cinematicness was pretty cool. Production was really great all around. Lots of love for just all the little details. The facial expressions were especially good. I think that's why the anime club started watching it, was that there was like a lot of GIFs being shared of really good facial expressions. And just adjusting it so you can see my facial expressions. Wow. But in the end, despite all this quality, it's just not that interesting. Beat by beat, I could just trivially predict the plot, the messages, the character arcs. There's nothing really surprising, nothing subversive, which isn't bad in and of itself, but if you're going to have something that kind of predictable and cliche, it should be carried by like an emotional connection to the characters, where because of your love for the characters like as people, you are super invested in the show. And here, I don't know, I like them okay. I wasn't super compelled. They were just fine. Is this it? Am I becoming a normie? Am I no longer able to experience moe? Am I no longer able to feel in love with anime characters? Haha, just kidding. Next we're going to talk about a show where I still am in the full fatal stages of the disease of moe. Anyways, this show gets a 7.5. Alright. Okay, now we're going to talk about Maid Dragon. This is the second season of Maid Dragon, but most of the stuff I'm going to talk about is not unique to the second season. I don't think it's very interesting to say, yeah, the second season was more of the same. Instead, I really want to get into the whole Maid Dragon phenomenon. What the hell is going on here? It's time. KyoAni is back. This is one of the first shows after the very, very tragic fire, the arson case that set them back and delayed production of most of their series for a long time. Maid Dragon itself is back after 4 years, I think. I think the first season was 2017. This is by far the most inexplicable trick in anime, and it has happened again. KyoAni's trying to trick him again. I saw some minor discourse around this, mostly by people who didn't quite get it, but I wanted to see a shitstorm. I wanted to see, and this feels like it should have happened, people that are into KyoAni for stuff like Koi no Katachi or Hibike Euphonium or K-On! or Violet Evergarden, these very mainstream, very like acceptable, critically acclaimed series that are like, yay, a new KyoAni show. I'm gonna watch Maid Dragon, and then they get like super pissed off. What I'm surprised this doesn't happen more often. It really feels like KyoAni is trying to trick people into this. Granted, I didn't look that hard to see angry people and look for discourse because I was too busy. And shockingly, I prioritized things like moving my possessions over scrolling Twitter endlessly looking for arguments. Shocking. But don't worry though. If you want the final answer to this discourse, I get it. I am in the know this time. I can reveal why KyoAni. I have a bit of hair in my mouth. Why KyoAni, one of the most critically acclaimed and mainstream respectable anime studios, has chosen to adapt the work of Cool Kyoshinsha, a notorious pervert, not once, but twice now. I can reveal to you that mystery. And I can reveal why some people really, really love this show and why some people really hate it. Alright, this is it. This is the great rumination of this season of anime. Let's dive into it. Okay, so I would say this show has three major modes in which it operates, this trifecta. First, it is just a leisurely slice of life show about unconventional families. Also, it is a lore-heavy show about draconic wars in a fantasy world that overlaps and interferes with normal Earth. And finally, it is a pervert show for perverts. So let's break down these three modes in which it operates and kind of try to piece together what the heck Maid Dragon is. So on the one hand, in the slice of life mode, it is one of KyoAni's most peaceful and relaxing shows at these times. There's the legendary healing effect of slice of life, which we talked about a lot in the Euro Camp review earlier this year. That's in full force here. Stories of little day trips and holidays and seasonal opportunities, just delighting in the pleasures of the day-to-day. But tranquil doesn't mean static, and this is something where I think Maid Dragon is uniquely strong in its writing, that characters undergo like very profound arcs. They realize their true selves, they build lifestyles towards being authentic, enjoying themselves better, living in harmony with the world around them. There's big moments with ongoing ramifications, and they're really given their proper weight, that they'll be sentimental about it. It has that lovely monumental feeling of instant sentimentality received from the future. What's a good example? I don't know, like Yuru starting her job at the candy shop. It's like a beautiful little moment, and they really take a second to emphasize, yeah, this is a big change in her life. This is like a whole new world opening up to her. And they really express that nicely. And everything in this mode leads to messages of love and family. I would say, if I could summarize the message of this series in one sentence, it's that a family can be anything, but everyone deserves a family. And this isn't delivered with like moralization, you know, it's not in some sort of like dialectic and some argument to convince you of the value of family, but with just unrelenting sincerity and showing it in a positive light and a non-judgmental openness to these very alternative definitions of family. It's sweet, but never saccharine. It's just the story of these weirdos making connections with one another. I think this sort of story is important, and we're going to get into this more later, but by expressing a story about like weird people deserve love, it resonates with people that would never seek out this sort of message in any other sort of medium. But as I said, we're going to talk about this more, but like I think that's really the ultimate goal of the slice of life and family components of Maid Dragon. Alright, let's talk about the titular dragons. This is one of KyoAni's most action-packed and thrilling shows, too, at times. It's a story of warring factions of dragons, the gods they obey and rebel against, and the humans scheming in the crossfire, all set in this traditional family fantasy world, with all of your fantasy hallmarks and stuff. But then these conflicts, of course, bleed out into the real human world via dragons always portaling back and forth and causing havoc. This is nothing groundbreaking. You've heard a story like this 1,000 times before, I'm sure. But it's like kind of compelling. They get into the philosophies of the different factions of dragons, how it reflects kind of how they want to live, how it reflects how they see humans and gods and this kind of complex society. It's compelling, but it's never distracting. And by that I mean you're kind of interested in these underlying histories and the lore and such, but always as a way to motivate deeper characterization. That you don't really care about the history of the Chaos faction in and of itself. You just care about Toru's character and how growing up in that environment has impacted her. Which again, nothing groundbreaking, but I think well executed. And another major aspect that they can use is like these semi-everyday, semi-slice-of-life stories that are really more like dragon stories. Things like Hannah's Adventure to New York or the twists on the normal camping story. The fantastical elements like enable other types of action sequences that aren't just like dragons fighting in a fantasy world, but still have like the elements that KyoAni wants to use this for, like action and fight scenes and that sort of drama. I'm actually surprised at how little of like the dragon lore stuff they covered, because the manga has like a few arcs after this that I thought were like really prime material for season 2. But I guess they're saving that for season 3. It ends on a pretty nice climax revelation, a very satisfying arc of both lore and characterization. I'm just kind of surprised at their restraint, because like it really does seem like they want to make season 3, which is just crazy. Like, how many KyoAni shows have had a season 3 ever? I can't think of any. But Maid Dragon's gonna get one. That's ridiculous. And we're gonna talk about this. If there's one aspect of this show that you know about, if you don't know anything else about Maid Dragon, you probably know this, that it is a pervert show for perverts. And it's true. This is a pervert show for perverts based on a manga by Cool Kyoshinsha. Cool Kyoshinsha has made many, many such perverted series, and even more intensely perverted doujinshi based around a wide number of pretty extreme fetishes. This is actually on the tame end for him. Very, very far on the tame. Not the tamest thing he's ever made, but like very tame in comparison to other things he's done. And indeed, this Maid Dragon anime has a wide number of fetishy plot points and pointless interludes. There's fan service. There's really goofy, like, perverse jokes and stuff. Like, I'm not gonna lie, this is all in there. This is something that everyone who knows about this show knows. I could list them off, but I don't think that would do any good for anyone. there's no way that my discussion of this anime is advanced by just going through all of these things. I feel like if you can imagine it, it's probably in there in some capacity. In defense, if this can count as a defense, I don't think that this show has very often actually meant to be like titillating. I don't think it's actually supposed to be like erotic or arousing or anything like that. There's really no sense of eroticism in like 99% of the scenes. It's just like gags, right? Like it's just like a dumb joke gag that involves like boobs or whatever. Just little punchlines and stuff that end up being perverse. But is that better? Like, is that better than a show that just actually tries to be erotic? I don't know. In what way can we say that either of these are any good? Because it's still the same fetishes like being depicted and being discussed. It's just like semi like ironically, kind of like kind of laughing at the idea of these fetishes, but also just still depicting them. So I don't know. And the original manga is definitely supposed to be like fan servicey and ecchi and you know, genuinely engaging on that dimension. I'm pretty sure. So like did KyoAni like toning it down sort of for the anime by like making it more like jokey and like less actually fan servicey? Is that better? Or is that just kind of like obfuscating it and normalizing it even further? I don't know. So what are unacceptably problematic fetishes? What is cancelable? Are they? Can you just draw a line at like paraphilias that, if enacted on in real life, would cause damage? And is that a line? What is a kink? What is kink shaming? Does this show perpetuate kink shaming by making jokes out of fetishes, or does it normalize fetishes by depicting them in this kind of like knowing gag type way? I don't know. This is the kind of discourse I wanted to see on Twitter. I wanted to see other people argue about this. But I have to do it all myself, and I simply don't know. I don't really have takes about this. And what responsibility do we have to consume art that is morally consistent with our values? I've talked about this enough. How many videos do we have that goes into this big digression about moral values in art? What is the value of having moral messages in art? What is your responsibility to consume only art or champion art that is consistent with your values? Let's just move past it, okay? Because this isn't really the point. This stuff exists in Maid Dragon. That's true. That's just like a fact of the world. But why? This is the real question. So let's return to our trifecta here. My roommate is on a call. I'm gonna close the door quick. Okay. I didn't even know they were home. I waited. I thought I waited until everyone left to make my hour-long discussion of anime. But there's no escaping shame. Anyways, so let's return to our trifecta. How do these three parts interact? Well, I would say that they all undermine each other. That, in trying to be this lovely, enchanted slice of life series, it becomes very difficult to take it seriously when it's trying to tell you about, dragons killing each other in a fantasy world. Likewise, it's very difficult to have like nice wholesome feelings about the slice of life parts when there's also all these like fetishes and perverts running around. And then of course it's really hard to take anything seriously when there's all these perverts running around. So none of these things work together. And so this does not work. But this is my big insight. There's another way to think about this. What if, instead of thinking about the actual content matter of the plots, you think about the way that they're depicted? So instead of a slice of life series, just think about it as blissful healing animation of daily life. Instead of it being this lore-heavy battle series, it's just awesome Sakuga fight scenes. Instead of being a pervert show for perverts, it's just goofy gag animation. Now, instead of these three conflicting types of plot, we have just three different ways of animating stuff. And this is why they did it. This is why KyoAni made this show and then made it again, and will probably make a third season. It's because it offers this unique combination in production. Is this perhaps the best produced show of all time? No, that's not really a meaningful thing to say. But how do you even begin to compare this and a show I praised really heavily last season for its production, Pretty Boy Detective Club? Well, we are going to compare them. But my point isn't going to be that one is better than the other, but that Maid Dragon is on this tier as well, of just absolutely god tier production. I'm not going to go into what the KyoAni style is, the way we went into what the Shaft style is, or the cool Kyoshinsha style, the way that we went into the Niseosian style. That's not going to benefit anyone. I'm also going to resist putting a million screen caps. There's no point. It's all about the motion. It's all about Sakuga. But really, never outside of Maid Dragon has KyoAni gone so hard on these three categories of animation. Nichijou is the only other contender, but like, when you talk about like the action Sakuga, Nichijou's is really good, but it's all like very gag based and stuff. Whereas Maid Dragon, the battle scenes are like really meant to be battle scenes, and never have I seen battle scenes animated like this. It's just mind blowing. And yeah, I don't deny that a major part of why I love this show is the production quality and this unique blend of three different production styles that rarely you get more than one or two of. But why? Why does good production make me overlook any weird moral stuff? Wonder Egg proved that there is a line that good production cannot overcome serious deficits in the plot. So it's not just like a binary thing for me where if the production is good, I'm just like, yeah, I love it. It's more that good production is compelling enough on its own that the plot doesn't have to do as much to keep me going. Or rather, the plot can kind of have like a different sort of appeal, a different angle of appeal. Okay, so I dodged this question for long enough. Let's really try our best to dive in and understand the appeal of good production. The mysterious forces of Sakuga. So there really is this like very fundamental, deep, good feeling I get when I see something that's very nicely animated. It isn't totally distinct from what I feel when I see like a masterpiece painting, or walk into a majestic cathedral, or hear beautiful music, or even like reaching the climax of a super compelling story. It's something like those things, but it's unique too. And maybe the closest thing you might think is like a really well shot scene in a live action film. But it's distinct from that as well. It's another feeling I get that's just as differently colored as all of these are from each other. The closest feeling I think I have to the feeling of like good Sakuga is a feeling of rhythmic bliss I get when I play In the Groove, which is like a DDR like dancing game that when you tap out like a really satisfying or like slightly complex rhythm, just the feeling of like timing things happening right when they're supposed to is so like deeply satisfying. And I think in Sakuga it really is a matter of like timing and pacing, a sense of like tension and release, which is why I think it gives me that same satisfied feeling. Not just in the movements of actual elements on screen, but in so many different creative dimensions where you can have something changing at some rate or suddenly changing or shifting between two states. You know, like the tone and the mood of the series, of each scene and each shot being expressed in so many different elements of the animation. Like things like the modeling of the characters, the realism of the background, the color palette, the way these things change, the way the characters move from like one depiction to another, the way the background switches from like a real depiction to an imagination depiction of some mode or emotion, the way the color palette changes and morphs. And we've talked about this in the long digression about Shaft too, but building up a timing between all of these different tools, all of these different dimensions on which you can change things. And then, like, this is something that KyoAni went really hard on in Maid Dragon that generally isn't like their style, which is these huge sequence-based breaks, where they'll just depict something in a totally different animation style for a while, reinforcing the cinematic mode of the episode and the plot content. It's like pretty experimental in that sense. This is one of the shows where Shaft and KyoAni overlap a little bit. So that's all well and good, but like, why do I like it? So on one level, it's probably just so fundamental that I can't really explain it further. Just that like nice feeling of Sakuga is so deep within myself that I don't think it's like anything I can break down into any more components. It's like a sublimity. It's like an aesthetic rapture. And it's unique, but in the same way that I can't say like why a beautiful painting makes me happy, I can't really say any deeper why Sakuga makes me happy. But there is another level, another layer of appreciation that happens a bit more intellectually. And this is true for any medium and any work of art, but we'll talk about it here with Sakuga because I think it's very revealing, which is this sense of communication between the animators of the series and me, the audience. And the more you watch anime and the more you understand animation, the more this factor is heightened, and the more you can appreciate and feel like you're in communication, or communion maybe is the word, with the animation staff. And we talked about this kind of visual language with Shaft animation, that they make so many references and homages. They build up like a library of icons that suggest different things, a codified language that you can see like inner messages within that's conveyed only through these aesthetic choices. But this is different. With KyoAni, it's like pure animation. They're not interested in establishing this sort of code. It's just pure conveyance of like action and movement and stuff. And yet the creativity, even though it is just sort of raw conveyance, is on par with Shaft. Just the completely marvelous ways that they can think of to depict any given action. Still has so much creative choice behind it. Still has so much ingenuity and inventiveness. And I feel this excitement from the animators in how they share these like brilliant new ideas. Like, just, I don't know, the simplest sort of sense of impact during a fight scene. Or the way that they'll depict the characters during a little gag break. Or the tranquility of a shot of them just sitting around on the couch. There's innovation in that. These things have been done a million times before. But KyoAni wants to take it to yet another level. They want to find new ways of conveying those feelings and those moods through the choices in animation. And there's this bubbling excitement in seeing how they've done it and seeing the passion of the creators. So in a sense, I would say this is also an anime for people that are deep into anime, just like Pretty Boy Detective Club. Although I think the visceral aspect of Sakuga is like very approachable, very intuitive. I think almost everyone can appreciate good animation. It's why Your Name was like a triple $1 billion movie or whatever. And I think this show is like pretty popular. I have no idea. All I can say is on the Annie chart thing, it was like near the top. But I have no idea what people are actually watching. I'm so disconnected from mainstream anime now. But despite the fact that like, yeah, there's like a very visceral level in which you can appreciate it, I think this show is for degens. This show is for the people that can parse it on the level of it being primarily about good production, that the goal was just to showcase brilliance in production, with a story that operates on the logic of doujinshi. And this is something that I wanted to get into more because I saw some discourse around it. The idea that Cool Kyoshinsha has like a doujin brain and doesn't understand like how human beings actually act, but only understands how like doujinshi characters act. But we can just say that is true. The person discussing this on Twitter wasn't wrong. But that to approach the series, it helps if you also understand what it is to think like that. Yeah, this one is for the degens. The way I've put this is so regrettable, but I've always felt it was important. I put the idea twice here. It was the idea of anime reaching marginalized minds. The language I've used here is terrible. But I stand by it in a sense. I stand by it with a semi-ironic distance that allows me to dodge criticism while not removing the authenticity with the audience I refer to. That's the ultimate in rhetorical positioning. Sasuga me. But no, for real. Otaku anime has like zero or negative social capital. You'll never become popular by watching it or by being into it. You're really only going to be degraded. By 99.999% of people. It's watched by mostly outcasts, by bullied people, by lonely people, by mentally ill people. And this is a series that meets those people where they are. And we've talked about this with Madoka before. The idea of a series meeting you where you are and coming to you as a close friend, as someone that understands you, that has suffered in the same ways as you. It isn't pure and moralizing, but it's full of the fetishes and the degeneracy that the audience has been cursed with. and it's full of characters with the same curses. But it's conveyed with such passion and expertise that you know that the people creating it are right there with you, that they understand your pain, they understand your desires. And then the message from this position, the message that these people are trying to convey to you, the degen otaku, even you deserve something that you can call love and family. I don't know if that's any good. I don't know if this is how to help people in this otaku cult. I don't know if it's just reinforcing bad behavior and bad conceptions of the world. I think that's a very, very nuanced question. The answer could be no. But I think it's sort of beautiful that there's people willing to put so much effort and so much expertise and so much creativity into something that has that goal, that has that message. I think that's sort of beautiful. So I would give this show a 10. Yeah, I love this show. It's just absolutely fantastic. And that's it. We got through only 4 shows, but it still took a while. I'm like really behind on this next season. I think there's like 6 episodes out of most stuff, but I haven't really watched anything yet. So who knows when the next anime review video will come out, but I'm glad I got this one done at least. Yeah, let me know. Especially I'm curious about shows that I didn't watch. Are any of these really, really, really good, and should I prioritize them over stuff that's currently airing? Okay, bye-bye.